Today, on The Naked Entrepreneur, we're honored to share a story of resilience, hope, and sweet success. A story that transcends borders and cultures. Join us as we welcome Tareq Hadhad, the founder of Peace by Chocolate, a company that's much more than a confectionery. It's a symbol of peace and new beginnings. Tareq's journey begins in war-torn Syria, where his family ran a chocolate factory for decades before it was destroyed, forcing them to flee to Lebanon and eventually finding a new home in Canada. In Nova Scotia, the Hadhad family started from scratch, rebuilding their lives and their chocolate business with a mission to spread peace through the universal language of sweets. Peace by Chocolate quickly became a Canadian success story, celebrated for its quality products and its commitment to employing and supporting other newcomers to Canada. Tareq's story is a testament to the power of entrepreneurship to change lives, bridge communities, and create a more inclusive society. His voice has echoed in the halls of power, sharing his message of peace and inclusion, inspiring others to believe in the possibilities of a fresh start. Prepare to be inspired by the incredible journey of Tareq Hadhad, a man who proves that from the ashes of destruction, hope and prosperity can bloom. Welcome to The Naked Entrepreneur. I'm Dr. Sean Wise, Professor of Entrepreneurship at Ryerson University, and your host for this in-depth conversation with Tareq Hadhad, the founder of Peace by Chocolate. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sean. It's been a pleasure.
I want to start at the very beginning. How did your family get into the business of chocolate?
It's actually a long story. It goes back...
We have all the time you want.
Yeah, okay, great. So it goes to 1986, basically. My father was graduated as a civil engineer from Damascus University. He went back home and he told my grandmother that he's no longer passionate about being a civil engineer. And the way that they described it to me after I was born is that he went to my grandmother's house. They had that conversation when he went very frustrated about the way he got into civil engineering, where he didn't like it because he felt that he would be following an academic path that tens of thousands, millions of students are following. The same information that everyone is getting from the school are going to apply in their life as, as engineers or as physicians or as lawyers. So he didn't really feel that he would make any impact or something different than the others. So they went the next day to my cousin's wedding. It was all by chance. And when they went back home, they started the conversation again when my father told my grandma that he felt something different when people were eating chocolate at the wedding. And that is, everyone who was eating chocolate was very happy. He said that chocolate is a product that changed the moods among the audience that attended that wedding. And he said that everyone was eating chocolate was happy. No one eats chocolate will be sad. That's his main idea.
Now, was this some kind of special chocolate, or was this just regular chocolate?
It's very special. And the way that this was happening, people in Syria usually learn so much about other cultures. Like the way it happens in the traditions into the communities, that if there is anyone going to do anything, he learns about how to do it in different ways. He learns how do the Turkish make their chocolate, how do the Americans eat their chocolate, the Europeans, all the Belgian chocolate. But the way my father did it back home is that when he learned about all of these chocolate companies and chocolate recipes from across the globe, he spent 3 months only reading recipes. He just learning about how to make chocolate. How is the best way really to create a tradition for the family, to create it and call it a Syrian chocolate, where there was not really a Syrian chocolate there. And he came up actually with a very delicious recipe that everyone was eating chocolate was loving my father. Whenever he's on the street, he was giving away chocolate to the neighbors, to the friends, opening connections with everyone. And at that time, he was still at my grandmother's house, playing with chocolate in the home kitchen when he was kicking out my grandmother when she was cooking just to mix recipes of chocolate. It was at a time when my grandmother's patience actually ran out, so she kicked my father out of the house, and then he had to rent a small tiny shop in downtown Damascus, where it was really the first incubator for the business, and it's been growing and growing and growing. So that little shop in Damascus with only handmade chocolate Then my father bought the first machine, and that's the way when my father fell in love with my mother when he gave her the first piece of chocolate. And they got married, and then I was born. That's exactly the way how my father originally started it, where no one of my ancestors, no one of my grandfathers or from the family really thought about it. Everyone in the family was doing the easy path that I call, which is the academic thing, which is like going and doing the things that either you love into the university, study to be a physician or an engineer or a lawyer or a teacher or whatever, or just be like your father. My father didn't like that. My father said that I don't want to be like my father, even though my grandfather was in the working for the government. He was a great advocate for the government, but he said that he really doesn't like that. And that's exactly the essence of the entrepreneurship in the family, that my father just realized it is very important. If he wanted to create a different path for the family, he had to take that decision to get away of his years that spent at the university with civil engineering and turn into something that has actually impacted the whole family for generations to come. And we felt that. Even when I was born, my family were just like fighting about my future. That's how it goes. If you are born in Syria, your father and your mother will be fighting on two things. First is your name, because your father will be trying to call you something that reflects his father, he's a grandfather, and then if you are the first son, and then your mother will be also trying to call you on her father and her grandfather. So that's the first thing they were fighting on.
Who won in that fight, by the way?
My mom.
Your mom.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And the second thing, my mom also won it, which is my future profession or career, which actually my father and my mother, they were just like always trying to get me into the family mood of entrepreneurship. But my mother was more into making me, as 99% of the Syrian mothers, where if you are born in Syria, 99% of the mothers want their children to become physicians.
Why?
I don't know why, actually.
You want free healthcare? Like, what's the motivation?
The thing is that physicians, they have a high rank into the society. Everyone respects them. Everyone seeks their help. Everyone seeks their advice because they are very wise people. But
your father built up quite a business, quite a respectful business. It wasn't that.
It was at the time.
So how big did it get? Let's just put a little context in this.
For the chocolate factory, it was the second largest chocolate factory in the Middle East. That was in 2002, when my father opened the large chocolate factory. When I was born, the business was still in the early stages. Yeah, early stages. So even though my family believed in the success of the business, but no one really knew what would happen in the future. No one really just took it as a successful example yet, right?
So what was that like growing up with everyone else's fathers wanting to be doctors and yours making chocolate? What did you learn growing up in an entrepreneurial household?
It was very interesting, actually, to be in such a house. But at the same time, it's more than the entrepreneurial family, more than my close family. I learned a lot from my bigger family. My bigger family, where we were living in a building of 10 floors. And these 10 floors were 60 members of my family. My grandmother's was on the first floor. We were on the second. My uncles, my aunts, my cousins. And that was very neat. That was like on the ancient Damascene style kind of thing. And at the end of every week on a Saturday, you will have to be there to get a supper with 60 members of your family in your grandmother's house. There was a giant table that will fit 60 members.
60?
60.
That's a big table.
It is. So you will have to be there to get the supper with everyone. And if you are not there, your grandmother will kick you out of the building. Like, you will not be part of the family anymore. So you have no excuse to miss any supper with your family on a Saturday evening. That's exactly the way how I live my entire life since I was born. The sense of family, the sense of community, the sense of safety and security and peace, and the support that I got from my cousins, from my uncles, from my aunts, the laughs, the jokes, the challenges, the cries, the tears, all of these, we share them together. And that's really part of the thing that will be blended into your personality for years to come. That's something that you would not forget, and that's something that would have an effect into your personality forever. And because I was raised in that type of community, in that type of family, I've been always thinking that I was in my comfort zone. It had a positive impact, it had a negative impact. The positive impact is like 99% of it. The negative impact is that I was always living in a zone where I know at the end of the day that if I had any troubles, any challenges, I have to turn to my family to solve them. I didn't spend any effort solving any of my problems in my life, which was actually a real problem at the end. I just discovered that I should not have really relied so much, depended so much on my father, on my family, because at the end of the day, I found myself isolated some of the days that I couldn't find anyone really to turn to. That was when we lost everything after the war. So, but coming back to my close family of like the entrepreneurial family, where my father really has planted that love of creation, love of innovation, love of being something new, being something different. That's exactly because of my father's intention that my family and the family that he is building is going to be something different than all of his family members has lived since they were born.
And yet, instead of the family business, you decide to be a rebel and become a cardiac surgeon.
Right.
And as a rebel, you decided to go to medical school.
Right.
How does one go from one to the other? Were you rebelling in your own way to say, no, I won't be an entrepreneur, Dad. I'm going to go back and do the thing that people wanted you to do in the first place?
Right. Well, my father came to the fact that he basically just told me when I was growing up and when I got to med school, he said to me that I would support you to become whatever you want to be. He said, whatever you want to be, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, you can get out of the med school and I will help you set up your startup. Whether you will continue med school, I will help you to become the most successful surgeon and doctor in the country. And I really felt at that time that I had the responsibility when I was given that choice. Because it's at the end of the day, right, I can't really disappoint my father, I can't disappoint my family. And I started really working extra hard just to prove to them that I am in medicine, not because my mother told me, when I was born, exactly, to be a doctor, but because I really felt that I was correlating very interestingly between chocolate and medicine, by the way. Even though there has been nothing really very clear about this correlation, the way I was doing it, medicine is the most, like the noblest profession on earth, where like, even though it's very practical, it's very classic profession, but it's always aiming to diminish the pain of the humanity. Like that's the main goal of medicine in the first place.
Although that was your father's goal too. After the wedding, he realized that chocolate diminishes pain.
Exactly. So that's exactly my point. You got it. Chocolate is the product of happiness, and medicine always seek to diminish pain. They come to the point where there is connection. So that's exactly how I was building it, and it was very interesting that I got massive support of my family after I got into med school. Even though getting into med school in Syria, what does that mean? That means that you are among the 0.001% of students that they get that opportunity, because it is massive competition.
For few spots to get into any medical school in Syria. And, I felt that, I have a great responsibility on my shoulders, and I have really to work very hard on that. And yet, a decade later, you're making chocolate. But we'll get there. Your life, as almost all Syrians' life, changed dramatically in a not positive way. Walk us through that experience and how it impacted the family, but not only that, the need to leave the unsafe location. You were talking about growing up in a building where you felt safe and secure, and then the exact opposite happens, and a country is torn apart,
and factories are bombed.
Right.
And life is no longer safe and secure. Tell me about that experience and how it played itself out.
If you came to me in 2010 and tell me that I will be doing an interview with you today and asking me that question, I would have said that it's impossible, right? I would say that.
Couldn't just foresee it.
Exactly. Just like I couldn't see that this is coming. No one actually in Syria has even imagined that the war would really burn the whole country in a blink of an eye and we will lose our lives. It started actually gradually in 2011. Then in 2012, when it turned into a massive, violent conflict, that really when the mass killings started to happen. In 2011, what I remember is that people, they were asking for kind of like reforms to the government. There's so much corruption going on. Mm-hmm. And even though we were kind of like a successful rich family in the community, we had our organizations that we were running for community support. My mother was a leader into support women's rights.
You were anchors of the community.
Yeah, and we were just doing great, but at the same time we felt that we were a successful family, but there were millions of other families in the country. They were living under poverty line outside of Damascus because the government was not paying any attention to them, because the government, so much corruption, all the money was going to the pockets of the big positions into the government and the family that was governing the country. So I really felt, and my family felt, that as community leaders, we had the responsibility to support our fellow citizens, our fellow Syrian citizens. And not only my family, it's been like, it started in the whole community where everyone was asking peacefully for some changes. But then so many people were killed on the streets. When I was doing some shifts at the hospital, some of my friends, they were physicians, they were arrested. And then we were, I remember that incident very well. We were like lab coats and we were carrying flowers and we were asking the government to release them. And so many of them were killed. Like so many of the protesters that they were with us were killed and the other part was arrested. I survived because I went back home and I stayed there for a week. I couldn't get out of my house because if they saw me on the street, I could have been arrested or killed or injured. But so many of my friends actually were like just died. And really the victims in that whole crisis were really the civilians, the real civilians, that they were trying to make the change into the country to make it better. Syria was peaceful, Syria was safe, but we felt that there's so much to do to make it, the country that we want. Even though some people, they would say that you are a rich family, why are you asking for the government to make changes, right? Like you are a successful family, so why do you care about other citizens?
Because there's other people.
Yeah, and some like it's awful. It's awful sometimes when people, they don't care about the others, right? Like because my family was raised to be humanistic first, to be caring, right? To be embracing, to be supportive. Not only if we are successful, that means we should just close the doors at the end of the day and just say, okay, we are living as a family, we're successful, we are living a happy life and we don't care about the others. We really didn't like it to be that way. And that's how our life just started to change as the lives of millions of people in 2012. So in 2012, the first night that I really felt the threat was we were in the house, and we started hearing for the first time a helicopter that approached the area. And we are used to that, there were so many helicopters that they were coming, but it was getting very close. It was screening the whole area. And at that time, we realized that the rebels started to come to the area. I asked my family to just go to sleep. It's going to be a peaceful night as usual. But then my father said, no, it's going to become dangerous. After only 10 minutes of that conversation between me and my father and the family, we started hearing explosions around the building. So my cousins and my uncles, they all came down. They didn't use the elevator.
On the 10th floor of the family building.
They didn't use the elevator at that time because they felt it's really dangerous to get stuck there. So they ran on the stairs. I heard that everyone was on the stairs going down to the basement, and we rushed to the basement, basically. All the family, all the kids, all the children, everyone was there, and we were stuck in a room in the basement because we didn't know that this is coming. So the only room we had in the basement was a room that can fit only 10 people. Like, we didn't have enough space for all of my family. How can you imagine that a room that can fit only 10 people in the basement, we were stuck into it, the 60 members, somewhere like, on the ground, somewhere just like laying on the walls. That was really the most, I would say, the most tense night in my entire life. I was just like thinking, how are we going to survive? Like, how can we get food? How can we get medicines? How can we get water? And we were just like hearing explosions around the whole building. What really increased that threat is that the power went out. We didn't have anything to survive on. And we knew that if anyone went out to the first floor or second floor just to get anything for the kids, or any clothing or anything, any blankets, he would be shot by the snipers. We spent there 5 nights.
5 nights in a room for 10 with 60 family members.
Where some of my cousins had the courage actually just to bring them some water to survive on, and just like basics of the food that were just like thrown away in the basement. And then the 6th day, I said to my family, we can't really stay here more. It's the time to leave, because at any point of time, we survived 5 nights here, but the explosions didn't stop around us for 5 days. And at any point of time, the whole building will collapse on our heads. So I don't want to die in the basement of the house. Let's go out and see what happens. And
when you went out after that 5-day period, what did you see?
We went out at 6 a.m. when we felt that between 6 and 8 a.m. the shooting and the bombing, the bombing stops for 2 hours. That's what we felt. So we went out, and there were like every dad in the family had a car where everyone went into the cars. We were packed, the whole family. We had 2 cars. The first one didn't work. The second one worked. And my close family is a big family. I have 6 siblings. And there was my mother and there was my father. So we were there in the car, 8 people. And it was, I can't just really imagine how horrible the drive was just to get out of the area and to drive. So we were kind of in one of the southern suburbs of Damascus. We felt that downtown Damascus, near the parliament and the government centers, is still safer considerably. So we drove to that area. But during
that drive, what was the landscape around you? Because all that bombing,
fire, dead bodies around across the roads, and children were shot, and it was really very. I don't know. I don't have words actually to describe that scene. It's been really something that would stick to the minds of the entire family. Even though my siblings were very young at that time, they didn't really.
It's hard to sort of get the image of 5 nights under bombing out of one's psyche. Was that around the same time that the factory was bombed, or is that a later date?
It was before the factory was bombed. So my father decided that we are leaving the house, but he would continue going to the factory. He would continue because we had around 300 employees. And he said that he cannot really let these people down because, it's their life, it's their family lives. They have kids to feed. And the war just made it very challenging economically for all of these families. So,
but the family's intent was to still stay, to still participate in the economy, to be part of the community. But soon that becomes untenable. Soon that becomes not an option. Tell me about coming to that conclusion. Realizing that even though for generations your family had lived on this land, that it was no longer safe and you could no longer allow your family to be subjected to this sort of uncertainty, this sort of danger.
Yeah, the way we were we were taking this is, as Syrians, we were always saying that we were not born to immigrate. We were not born to leave our homeland. We were born to enjoy our connections in the community, to enjoy our life with our friends and society. And just like we are like fish in the ocean, we can't really, if we go out of Syria, we will have nothing to do. We will have nobody to make friendship with. And at that time, it was hard when my family members started to leave the country. Some of them went into South, some of them went to Turkey, some of them went directly to Europe. And my close family was really one of the last part of the family to stay in downtown Damascus, because my father, he said that we are not leaving, we are staying. And we all supported that decision, because for me, I felt that I have a responsibility as a physician to support my, the people that they got injured into the explosions.
Were you still able to practice? Were you still able to help? I mean, if you're fleeing your home,
right.
I don't know how you're showing up at the hospital.
It's, all of the here's what happened. So all of the people that they lost their houses around the city, they all moved to their second places that they had into the city. So my family had another house in downtown Damascus that we moved to. But when we were staying there I'm talking to you about late 2012 still. Mm-hmm. So when we were staying there, we hear that our house was stolen, our whole building. Mm-hmm. As we left everything, we didn't take anything from the whole building. It was safe. It was still secured when we went out. It didn't get bombed when we left it at that 6 a.m. morning. But after a few days, it got stolen. Then after a few days, it got burned. So the people that they stole it, they burned the whole building. And then they bombed it by a tank. So we didn't really believe what happened. And for me, it was the most horrible things to lose my memories that I have been building and collecting.
This is a family. This is an element of your whole clan. Your grandmother, the cousins.
Exactly,
all sharing space. It's not a physical building.
No,
it's an ecosystem.
Exactly. It's like the history of the family. It's like it has all the memories, all the good memories that we were being raised in that building.
And yet your dad still wants to stay, still wants to help the 300 employees.
Yeah.
But even that doesn't become possible.
At that time, it was in late 2012 when my father was at the factory. And one of my friends that he lived in the same area that the factory was in, he said to me that you should ask your father to leave. My family left the area and it's going to be bombed. So I called my dad. He was at the factory with the employees during a meeting. And then I said, Dad, you should leave with everyone. And within 10 minutes, everyone has left. Everyone has left the factory. And my father left, and he was up a hill, and then he saw helicopters started to come to the area, and then he realized that there were coming to be definitely explosions. They will bomb that area. He didn't know what happened after he left the factory. So he arrived home in downtown Damascus, the place that we were staying in. And then he said, oh, thanks God, I arrived home. We are safe. The employees left. Everyone is safe. No one was hurt in what's going to happen in the area. So I just left everything. All the employees, the supervisors left, the managers, everyone has left. They got back home to their families, and he felt very great about that. I was still home. And then my friend, he sent me the pictures of the factory. The entire factory was on the ground.
Leveled.
It's level. The explosion that has happened, it's like the explosive materials that were used to bomb our factory. I don't know what did we do to these, people in the regime or in the military just to bomb the factory that hired 300 people that was contributing massively to the whole area, and there were thousands of distribution networks across the region that they were relying on the production that was happening there. It was impossible to believe that this even happened. And
you have the pictures. Is that enough for your father to finally say,
I didn't show him that.
Really?
Because I felt that he would be he would be broken. He would be he would have a heart attack. So I still waited for a few days, and then I started, pass this information to him gradually. But then I didn't do that. It was my mistake. But then he received the pictures from his friend. And then he realized that everything has gone. And at that time, I still convinced my family that we lost the factory, we lost the house, but we can still stay in downtown Damascus. It's still safe, and it's our place, it's our house, and we can still. My siblings can go to different schools. My father can start any type of business or can do anything. You know that the mentality that we're thinking.
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're just thinking it is.
Because it's so unbelievable that this could be happening.
Exactly, and I just felt because my father was on the edge of the final break. Do you know what I mean? Like he was almost
last straw.
Yeah, the last straw, exactly. I felt that if we left the country, that would be the end for him.
But yet you did leave the country. So
we did leave the country after.
What led to that?
After I came back one day, it was March 2013. I came back from one of the sessions that I was having there, and I saw my brother beside the car. We were talking about how the day at the school went, and then after a few minutes, a mortar rocket hit near me and my brother.
A mortar rocket hit the two of you sitting outside of the second home in downtown Damascus, where it was supposed to be safe.
Exactly, the sidewalk. And it was, you couldn't see anything in there. And from the explosion, that was the nearest explosion that happened to me and my brother, even though we were in a very dangerous situation before. But then the horrible thing that was at that time is that my brother, he couldn't move his hand. He couldn't just move at all. And the only thing I was hearing is that my mother was on the balcony screaming with our names. She didn't see us because of the explosion, because of the smoke. And I couldn't even reply to her. I didn't know what's happening. I didn't know what happened. I was just in shock. I just realized that I'm alive. And then I saw my brother opening his eyes. I carried him. We rushed into the house. And then I told my family, that's it. We can't just stay longer. I can't really afford to lose anyone else. And that was after days of losing my cousin when one of the soldiers just shot him in his head. So these days actually we're just thinking it is really the time to leave. It's not time. That's what I said exactly that day to my father and my mother said. It's not time to do medicine. It's not time to do business. It is time to survive. So the next day, exactly the next morning, we packed the small things that we could take with us. And then we left, we headed to the Lebanese borders in the car. And we knew that it's going to be, we felt it's going to be a short time until we come back because I know, there is no war that will last forever. The First World War ended, the Second World War ended, right? But it's going to be longer. And I just thought that it's going to be a short-term struggle until we come back to the country to rebuild what has been destroyed.
So the plan was to be in Lebanon or a related country for a short period.
Exactly, for a short period, then come back.
But yet you end up in Nova Scotia, small town Nova Scotia.
Yeah, can you just imagine
how... I can't imagine any of this.
No one actually can imagine, just leaving from Damascus, ending up in Nova Scotia. The province that I couldn't even, if you pointed on the map, I would say, where is that, right? It's been really interesting how they...
Well, I heard you once said that most newcomers to the country, it's MTV.
Right, you hear that?
I had to think about it. So they only know Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver.
That's right.
So they don't realize there's other towns or cities, just those three places.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in Nova Scotia?
That's a big question. You just skipped the entire period in Lebanon. But that whole 3 years in Lebanon were really interesting. But at the end of these 3 years, when it was the time for my family started thinking about leaving to another country, because we couldn't go back home to Syria. We can't start our lives in Lebanon because...
And Lebanon had allowed you to cross the border. There was no refugee camp. They allowed free travel.
At that time, yes. But at the end of the day, there were 2 million Syrians that arrived in Lebanon within 2 years. And the whole Lebanese population are 4 million. Half of the population in Lebanon arrived. Yeah, exactly. Arrived within like only 2 years. Imagine Canada is 35 million. Imagine 80 million Americans are crossing the borders. Now
I don't want to imagine that. I really don't. But
so it was really hard pressure on Lebanon, the Lebanese people. So we said that we can't go back to our homeland. But now we had the opportunity to travel to another country.
Did you choose Canada or did Canada choose you? How does that process work?
I applied to go to different countries.
Okay.
And my family started thinking to go as hundreds of thousands, millions of students as they went to Europe. You read in Germany when people arrived there, they were crossing the Mediterranean, arriving in Greece, then just like continue walking till they arrive, whether in Sweden, whether in Germany, whether in the UK. But my family were thinking to do that. What changed their mind is that one of my cousins, she was with her kids in the first days where we started dealing with smugglers to go from Turkey to Greece, and she was texting me in the summer of 2015. It was at the beginning of 2015, and she was telling me that she's on the boat, and she decided just to go with her kids to Greece. She was with 55 people on that boat. And the boat was a tiny thing. It can't just handle these numbers. And she said that she's very afraid that she took that decision. After I said to her, you should text me every 15 minutes so I would know that you are fine. She was texting me after every 15 minutes, but after an hour, I lost the connection with her. And I know that the road, because the boat will go into corrugated way. It will take them 3 to 4 hours to arrive in Greece. And I lost the connection with her. And I couldn't sleep that night. I was just telling her, I was sending messages to her with no replies. And then I just heard from friends that a boat with 55 people drowned in the Mediterranean because the engine stopped. And actually there was no possible way for rescue. So everyone on the boat died. So Halima, who is my cousin, she died in the Mediterranean in 2015 with her 3 kids. And I was really afraid for my family at that time. I was just feeling, well, my siblings could have been there. And I was just the picture of my siblings on a boat going to Europe and with my parents didn't leave my mind. I tried every possible way. And at that time I was with the volunteering with the UN, HCR, and volunteering with the World Health Organization. I got to know some connections at some embassies in Lebanon, in Beirut. And one of them was the Canadian embassy, when I knew that there was a program to apply to come to Canada as continue my studies. That's how I applied. There is a program called WUSC. Have you heard about WUSC?
I haven't heard of WUSC.
WUSC is the World University Services of Canada. And those people actually give scholarships for youth people that they lost their lives into their homelands. They want to come to Canada to study at the universities. So they give them scholarships, basically.
What were you going to study? You were already a medical doctor.
Right, but there is no other way for me, actually, other than coming back to study in the university and then go back to medicine, right?
Okay.
I applied, and they told me at that time that it's not possible for me to come, right? It's really, they were looking for people at the early stages that they are almost finishing high school, and it's really hard for me to be on that wave of students that they're bringing. What happened is after they declined my request in early 2015, a month after, I received a call from the embassy. And I was just almost finishing a meeting. When my phone rang, he said in Arabic, because I didn't speak really well English at that time, so I was speaking Arabic. He told me that, Tareq? I said, yes. He said, Tareq, I just got your application from WUSC. I'm the immigration officer at the Canadian Embassy in Beirut. And he said that your application is excellent, man. I said, I spent actually a day long just preparing in the application at that time, telling them what my family will do in Canada, what did we do in Syria, our ambitions. He said, well, man, you are invited with your family for a private sponsorship and a private mission from the embassy in Lebanon to go to Canada, because we know that you and your family are going to be very successful there, and we want to give you that opportunity that we only are giving to 3 families to travel at that time. And at that time, I thought it's a scam, so I hanged up on the phone.
You hung up on the immigration officer.
The Canadian immigration officer.
He probably said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah. At that time, I didn't know that Canadians should say sorry. So after 1 week, they emailed me from the official email from the embassy. And they said that that's a genuine request. That's a genuine offer from the embassy. And I am offered to travel to Canada with my family.
Did you know anything about Canadian life? Did you have any understanding, or was it just anything is better than the alternatives?
There is a short story I should tell you.
Please.
In 2008, in Damascus, I was going out. I was using the public transportation, so I was on the bus. And there was a man who jumped on the bus, and he looked very scared. Like he was looking around and didn't speak to anyone. Usually anyone goes on the bus, he would say to the driver, like, hello, salam alaikum, or whatever. Yeah. But he didn't say anything. He looked very scared. And he came, there was a seat beside me, he sat beside me. At that time, my English was very broken. I didn't know actually what was going on. He was carrying English books.
Okay.
And then I started the conversation with him. I said, is there anything I can help you with? In Arabic, he didn't reply. Then I knew that he doesn't speak Arabic. And then in Damascus, at that time, the country was in huge tensions with the United States. And everyone that was speaking English on the roads, he was almost considered a threat to the country. He was considered a spy to the United States. So I was trying to talk to him in a very, actually, Faith was just like said, is there anything I can help you with? And then he said to me that, just realized that he was Canadian. He lost his passport. He lost his paper. He couldn't reach the embassy. He was trying to find them. He lost them at the public garden park in Damascus, and he was really afraid. He was just afraid to cross 15 minutes in the bus to the embassy and to tell them what happened or to use any public phone. So what happened is he went with me to our house. He stayed with us for 10 days until my friends and I were just like, I called my friends, they were coming to help to find his passport and his papers that he lost. And then after 10 days, he was sleeping with us in the house. He was sleeping in one of the rooms in my grandmother's house. And then I realized that he was a man from a town in British Columbia. I forgot actually its name. And he was always telling me about Canada, what does it mean to be Canadian, and how this country was formed. It's very interesting. And he was there to do like photo shooting about the Eastern culture, about how do people live in Syria and the whole of Middle East. After 10 days, he knew exactly, like we hosted him there, but I had never thought that I would travel to Canada. He was telling me everything about Canada. Mm-hmm. Imagine like that indication that happened 10 years ago.
That was the only context you had.
Exactly. The only thing that happened. The only time that I heard about really the Canadian culture, the Canadian people, that I met really a Canadian person, until I met the Canadian people at the embassy. But at that time, I heard all about like Canada, and he was sending my entire family. So he joined us on one of the suburbs on a Saturday. And he was telling me, and then I was trying to translate, he was telling me that Canada is a country where you should avoid visiting between October and April. Just stay away.
Snow.
Yeah, like stay away, right? It's the best country to visit May to September. It's beautiful, it's great, but don't try to step in this month. And we were laughing, saying, okay, why should we go to Canada? It's like 8,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, and if it's going to be bad 6 months of the year, what am I doing?
Exactly, so what I'm going to do there? So we were laughing, actually. We took it as we were just making jokes about Canada.
But 7 years later...
7 years later, we
you're
found
invited
Canada
to move,
yeah.
And that's the only reference you have. So do you just take a leap of faith?
Canada opened the doors for us when other countries closed them in our face. And that offer that I got from the embassy, I stick to it actually with my teeth. I said, I can't lose that offer. We will make it happen. So I did the interview, it went great. I went back home, and that time I didn't tell my family anything until everything was settled, was official. And I called my family, I said, Dad, don't sleep tonight. I'm coming from Beirut to Saida. It's 40 minutes drive in the taxi. And I arrived home late, and everyone was awake. My father was behind the door. He didn't even wait for me to knock because he was looking from the window. He opened the door, and all of my family members were awake. And when my father opened the door, he said, "What happened?" I said, "Oh, Dad, look, my family will travel." And he said, "Where? To the United States?" I said, "No." He said, "To Brazil." I said, "No." He said, "To Sweden." I said, "No." He said, "To Germany." I said, "No." He said, "To Japan." They tried with my father, my mother, and my siblings. They tried every country on the globe, but no one of them mentioned Canada because we were making jokes about the cold in Canada in 2007 and 8.
So did they believe you when you finally said, "You remember 7 years ago?"
No, the way it happened is that I told them, "We will travel to Canada." They were exactly silent as you are now for a moment. And then they told me that Canada is too cold. Like they were like shivering even before hearing the name. And it was a very funny night where we were spending time just like exploring more about the country and how lovely it is to settle in the one of the most diverse countries in the world where people just come with different cultures. It's like the mother of the entire globe, right? Where you see people where you walk downtown Toronto, or you walk in Vancouver, or you walk anywhere, you see people from all over the globe. Even though now, it's just like I met people from at least 50 countries today in one place, which is phenomenal.
It's a mosaic. It's made up of all the best from everywhere else and together finding
Absolutely. And then I told my family it's going to be a very successful journey for us if we went there.
So let's move forward. So you were invited to Canada, and you don't settle in Toronto, Vancouver. You don't settle in Montreal or Halifax even. You settle in small town Nova Scotia. Was that a choice, or was that this is where you're going?
I arrived in Toronto, and before my family, I arrived in December 2015. And the only thing I remember is I was not told.
You arrived in December?
I arrived in December.
So in the period where it's not supposed to be that
Exactly,
nice.
yeah.
Okay.
In the red period, that don't step in. So I arrived around December 18th. And one of my friends, he was on the plane with me, and he was trying to learn English on the plane. And he was learning on YouTube how to start a conversation with an English speaker. And the only thing he learned, if you want to start a conversation with an English speaker, you should always talk about the weather. And if you
Which is always terrible.
And he was European, like the tutor was European. He was telling him, you should start a conversation by saying, "Hello there, it's a beautiful weather out there." And then you will hear a response from the people that you are talking to, the English speaker. He didn't know anything in English except
that was it.
That was it. So we arrived together, Toronto, December 18th. It was minus 22. They called one of the first coldest nights in Toronto. And we went to do the interview. The officer was asking him, hello, and then he didn't speak anything. He didn't know anything, how to answer in English. But when we finished the interview, he was looking at me. I said, "Don't do it. Don't say anything to him. It's wrong."
And then he
said, "Hello there. It's a beautiful weather out there." And then that officer looked at him like this, and he said, "Are you serious?" And then my friend went out of the airport and came back as a frozen chicken. He went back to him. He took my phone. He rephrased the sentence and told him that, "Hello there. It's horrible weather out there."
So how did you end up in Nova Scotia?
That night, they called me and they said, "You have a flight to Nova Scotia." And I even didn't know where is that. I told them I want to stay in Canada. They said, "Nova Scotia is in Canada." I arrived the next day in Halifax airport. And then I at that time, still, I didn't know what's happening. I thought that I'm kidnapped.
Yeah.
So I arrived in Halifax. I was going down the stairs. And when I was going down the stairs in Halifax airport, I was looking from the windows, and I was seeing a group, they were waiting. And I was the last one who landed from the airplane. So when I was going down the stairs, I saw this group, and they were carrying signs in Arabic and in English. And they were saying, "Welcome to Canada, Tareq." And they were with the flags, with the flowers, people, there were smiles. And like 30 people, they were there. Almost 30 people were there at that night. They were just like blocking. You know Halifax Airport. They were just like almost blocking.
Yeah, there's only like two gates, so it's not that big.
They were just like no, it's almost it's 20 gates. But I mean, they were blocking the whole area in the reception. And when I was there, I arrived there, and they said, "Are you Tareq?" They didn't know even my picture. They didn't get any picture of me. and said, yes, but I'm sure that I'm not Tareq that you're looking for. I said, oh my God, that name is very famous in Canada. Everyone is called Tareq. Yeah. Then he said, no, we are sure that you are Tareq that you are looking for. I said, I don't know you guys. Who are you? And they said, we came from a town called Antigonish. I said, Antigo what? And they said, Antigonish. And I was very surprised. I have never heard of this town. And then I realized that they started talking to me about what is this town about. It's like 2 hours northeast than from Halifax. This group is a community leadership group that they did fundraising to bring a Syrian family that they don't know, to apply for the government to bring any Syrian family. They didn't know anything about us.
So let me ask you, you're driving in the car, it's 2.5 hours. You, a moment ago, thought you were kidnapped. Now people are telling you that, sight unseen, they've raised money to help you to start again. Mm-hmm. What's going through your mind? Like, how does that feel?
They were actually a mix of feelings. They were a mix of emotions. I was just like, it was the moment of my life when I realized that these people did such a noble thing to bring human beings that they don't know, just because they knew that they needed to help after seeing the picture of Alan Kurdi on the shore, on the Turkish shores, after he washed up on the Turkish shores. So they really wanted to take actions because they didn't want their children or their grandchildren in the future, when they asked them what did they do about the most horrific crisis in the 21st century, and they didn't know nothing. So they wanted really to help. And when I was in the drive in the car, I was in tears. Like, I was thinking that these people, they didn't know me. They didn't know how do I look like. They didn't even ask me anything at the airport about my background, about my skills, about my talent. And everything they cared about is that I am a human being and I was seeking safety and peace. That's really the only thing that they cared about when I was in the car.
Now that love didn't end in that airport.
Right.
From my understanding, the support that they've provided has been extraordinary. Tell me about the first shop, the shed they built, the first little place. What was that?
Well, after my family arrived, my family arrived after 10 days. And it was really phenomenal to see the support in the first days of the business when we started.
For those that don't know, it's not a big town.
No, it's
not like millions of people.
No, it's 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Right, there is a university called Halifax.
And now it's 4,010 when we'll come in. But yes.
Right, yeah. So it's a very small town. And
very
for
small.
us, being from Damascus, the city of millions, tens of millions of people, to...
Well, 4,000 was Saturday night dinner at your grandmother's house. Like,
exactly, yeah. They were just like, everyone can fit
everyone
there
knows
in our building, yeah. So I was meeting hundreds of thousands, everyone. On my way to the hospital, on my way to the university. It's just like, even non-realistic for me to imagine that I would be in a town of 4,000. I said, how I'm going to survive? I arrived around the night in Antigonish, but then when my family arrived, we started thinking that it is time for us to take actions to give back to the community.
Hold on. You just fled a war. You lived 3 years in a country not your own. You've come from a foreign jurisdiction to a country that all you know about is its awful weather. People have opened their door for you, and the first thing you're thinking about is how to give back?
We didn't ask Canadians to do anything for us more than opening the doors at the airports. We didn't even ask them to walk us through the life here. We just really wanted to survive. Wanted to land in a place where we will take our next steps by our own. We didn't really want to, to rely on just like on others in our life. We said that it's our responsibility when we arrive in Canada just to say thank you to the people that they brought us. Thank you for the people that they were very kind to us on the airplanes. We came here. We were brought to Canada with like royal flights. It was amazing. And as a normal human being, when you get that support, it's then your responsibility as a normal human being to be grateful and to be thankful, right? So
I might agree with you, but I'm not sure that everyone who has gone through such trauma is going to feel that way.
It is. Sometimes it's variable, but at the end of the day, people, they are in their genuine aspect as human beings, they are always grateful. Like, if you are in the most horrible situation. If you are broke and someone will give you a hand to take you out of this suffering, right? At the end of the day, you not just like shout at him and say that, why did you take me out of that suffering? I was enjoying it.
So the family wants to give back. And the one question I've been dying to ask you is, you're a doctor. Not only a doctor, you're a heart surgeon. One would think that the town could always use an extra doctor, or the province could always use an amazing heart surgeon.
Right.
But you go into the chocolate business again. So your father creates a chocolate business, and you want nothing to do with it, so you go be a surgeon.
Right.
Now you come to Canada, setting your credentials aside and the exams you might have had to take to re-get your license, but you decide now to go into the chocolate. Where's that about? Where's that coming from? Like, I would have thought the easiest way to give back would be to be the doctor. To give of what you're already trained for. But no, you decide you're going to build a chocolate factory.
Canada is excellent, but it's not perfect, right?
Absolutely, it's not.
So we were always trying to give back in any way possible, right? Like I was trying to be a physician since the first day I arrived in Canada. When I met with so many administrative people at Dalhousie, at Memorial, I called all the universities in the country and tried to make connections. I tried to attend conferences, medical conferences, and for students. But then I realized that people are asking me to do undergraduate degree again. Some universities asked me to do high school again. And I said, that is insane. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to waste at that time when I arrived in the country, when I'm very ready to give back as a physician. I'm not going to waste 5 more years, close the doors on my room, study again, 5 more years in my undergraduate degree, and then go back to medical school. When at the time when I had the responsibility since the first week I was in the country to show some of the people in the country that they were always asking, why did Canada bring people from overseas where there are homeless people in Canada, right? Why did Canada just spend millions of dollars on bringing people there? There are homeless people in Canada, where there are people in need in the country.
So despite knowing all the wonderful people in Canada, there are people who hold that belief.
I was reading the comments on CBC article, the first interview I've done with CBC, and then I said, okay, not really. There are wonderful people in Canada.
So how do you feel when someone says, why are we spending money to help this person? How does that feel as a human who's just received so much help?
I completely understand that, because absolutely, I completely understand that. But then, at the end of the day, I was in the country. I was here, right? So I always try to take positive actions. I always try to change minds positively. If I reply to him and I said, I'm here in Canada and you can't do anything, just ship me back or send me back to my homeland, I could have done that.
But you didn't. You did the exact opposite.
Exactly.
You said, I'm gonna show them that we're not taking jobs.
Exactly.
I'm gonna create jobs. I'm gonna show that net. I'm gonna remind people that this country was built on people who weren't born here.
Yeah.
And our greatest achievement on a global stage is being a place that people want to go to.
Absolutely. That was exactly my reaction to them. I said that people, they usually believe examples, like they believe true stories, right? If I was going to give them a speech till tomorrow that we are here, we love you guys, we came here because we want to contribute, because we want to work, we want to build jobs, build companies, they won't just trust me. And I want to tell them, okay, I'm in the university now, I'm 5 years in the university, I'm relying on a student loan, I'm taking taxpayers' money to spend for my education.
It doesn't sit well with you.
It doesn't sit well, no. It doesn't it doesn't feel right?
So tell me the story of the first chocolate shed. I have it written down that it was a shed that they built for you. So
Yeah.
I have to understand that.
We were working first in the house, and then my mother was fed up with my father, like with all of us, because we started the first work, the whole family, everyone was making chocolate basically in the home kitchen. And then I started creating the visuals, the name, registering like a business. And then I felt it is really the time to get out of the house. And the only space that we got as a startup is that in the Syrian mindset is that you grow as much as you can afford. Don't just grow too fast, because you
grow into your shell. You grow into the space.
Exactly. Yeah. Growing to the space that you can really afford. If you are broken, you can rebuild it. right? In the first place. That's how my father's mentality was in Syria. And that's how we really were just like in the environment we were living in. So I asked the community if there is any way we can build a tiny factory beside our house. And we were lucky to be in like one of the main streets in Antigonish. Well, Antigonish is only 2 streets. We were
one the main street, one's the other street. Yeah.
Right. So we were like on really a main street that it's very easy to get to near the hospital. And the whole community came to us and they said, well, listen, we can build. And there was actually a friend I should mention. His name is Frank Galland. Frank was the person, the behind the scenes person. The one that was always with us. That he was a friend. He became a friend of the whole family. He is a business counselor and he's a leadership coach. And then he started really thinking with us about what we can do, how we can build that beside the house. Then I remember going in his tiny car, filling it with the pieces for the shed for the first time, and then bring it back to the shed, and people they start building things beside
But literally, it was a shed. It wasn't a big.
No, it was a
big
shed.
Factory.
It was a shed. It was like 12 feet by 16 feet, something. And that little shed took work for 2 months, like from carpenters, from electricians, from plumbers. And some stores in the town donated the construction materials. Some people, they were just like doing the registration in the town because we are in a residential area. We can't sell from there. We got like exceptions because, it's at the end of the road. It was really the best 2 months in my entire life when I was seeing people just like coming together to help build a factory for a business that they don't know if it will succeed or not. They were spending their time after they get tired to their house. 6 p.m. they were coming, staying till midnight, working on building a shed for us. Like, when you think about it, it is, what can be really nobler than that? What can be more humanistic than that? What can be more supportive? And what can be more believing in our story and in our message of building peace through every piece of chocolate that we were making. That's exactly.
And that's become the mantra, the driving vision, peace through chocolate. And you've taken it, you've grown it, you've repaid the town with jobs and positivity and citizenship. Why do you think so many immigrants, so many newcomers come to Canada and choose or have chosen for them the role of entrepreneur? What's the correlation?
Usually, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, these newcomers or immigrants, the highest majority of them, they don't really work in the same fields. Some of them, they don't work in the fields that they were working in, or even some of them, they changed the way that they were working in their homelands and building like different models of businesses in Canada. And the way for that, and the reason for that, as a newcomer, you are coming from out of the box, right? So you are screening that entire, fresh set of eyes. You're seeing what is missing. While if I'm in Damascus living my entire life there, it's hard for me really to believe that there is something missing into the community. What should I build there? Where are the gaps, right?
So the newcomer comes with eyes wide open, with fresh perspectives.
Absolutely, and there is a reason also for that, because they want to prove themselves, right? And there is a positive reason for that, which is they are motivated. They want to translate their skills. They want to translate their experiences. They do like a screening of the whole community, the whole area, wherever they want to stay. But there is also sometimes, it's not our case, but I'm telling you the other case of immigrants. Sometimes they feel that they are forcibly asked to prove themselves. Okay. If they don't prove themselves, they'll be asked to leave, right?
Okay.
And they feel that their ship's pack were burned. There's no way back home. So they have to work hard. They don't have to. They should not sleep. Back. Exactly. They should not sleep, or they will be asked. They will be kicked out of the country, right? Because they will be thinking that there is a population. There are taxpayers. They'll be asking them, why did you come here and you are not working, right?
You're taking away, yeah.
We are working, we are paying taxes to make roads, to pay for the schools and for the healthcare, and you just came from far away, and now we are paying on you, and now you're relying on welfare or government subsidies.
So the
That's
fresh eyes,
exactly.
the feeling of responsibility,
Exactly.
these things all combine to make entrepreneurs
Exactly.
and newcomers correlate. We have to wrap up, but I have to ask you, you are an entrepreneurial success. You're going to continue to be successful. We are continuing to open our doors to people from all over the world. What advice do you have for the next generation of newcomers?
At the end, I would say they should always believe that Canada is not like other countries. I was in London, UK last week, and I got so much aspect from how Europeans usually deal with it. And I know that Canada is different from our southern neighbor right now, right? It is one of the best countries at this moment just to start up businesses and to come here to rebuild a life. And at the end of the day, you should always be thankful and grateful for the opportunity. There are always ways to complain about the type of life. But then just think about how millions of people across the world, they are just like thinking and dreaming about coming to Canada every day.
Even with the snow.
Even with the snow. Even with whatever is happening. The quality of life, the way that things are organized, this country is really leading the world right now. It's one of the G7, but I say it's the G1, right? Like it's really the best country for me on earth right now because I've traveled so much. And I believe that these newcomers definitely should be always grateful, should take their own ideas and drive them into reality. And at the end, they are not asked to stay in one place. They are not trees. They don't have roots. They have legs. They can move wherever they want. It's the second largest country in the world. There is opportunity for everyone. And maybe the first year can be hard. Maybe the first 5 years can be hard on them. But then their kids will be in schools. Their kids will be in universities. They will start a fresh life here. And they will definitely find a place for themselves. When we arrived in Canada, we had no idea that our chocolate will be in space. Our chocolate was with NASA.
Yes, I read that. That was unbelievable.
And I saw the chocolate we were making in Antigonish with the astronauts in NASA floating in zero gravity. Something we were making in Antigonish. We have never dreamed about that. We have never dreamed that we'd be chosen by Google, one of the giant empires in technologies, to be the hero case in the entire of Canada. It is unbelievable where your passion can take you. It's unbelievable where your perseverance and determination can take you. But at the end, it is not a bad day. It's a bad moment that you're having sometimes. And there is a great quote that I usually finish with.
Please.
No one can go back and start a new beginning, but everyone can start today and make a new ending.
Wow.
That's it.
And that's where we're going to have to end it. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so